I am Sarah Schmeer, and I am a Colorado native, outdoor enthusiast, traveler, adventurer, and writer. I am doing this because I have a passion for travel that matches very few other things in my life. And Richard Halliburton, in particular, has struck a chord with me that I'm just so excited to travel around the world and recreate his life. I first learned about Richard Halliburton in freshman year of college. A friend of mine gave me one of his books called The Royal Road to Romance, and it's Richard's first book, and I think probably his best as well. And I read that book and was hooked. And then a few weeks later, I walked into a used bookstore that was closing down, and on their shelf was all five of Richard's books, first edition hardbacks, for $5 each. And it almost seemed like a sign, and I went ahead and bought them all and read them all cover to cover, and this idea has kind of been brewing in the back of my mind ever since. I came back from a transcontinental motorcycle trip where I rode from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Panama City, Panama. People always ask if that's Panama City, Florida, and I was like, no. Panama City, Panama. And I came back from that feeling kind of at loose ends, like I usually do when I come back from a big trip. And I was out hiking a local area in Evergreen, and this idea just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was so excited that I practically ran home so that I could start writing down ideas and piecing it all together. So that was in 2011. The name Uneven Tenor comes from a letter that Richard wrote his father. His father first wrote him when he was out on one of his European adventures and said, "Richard, when are you ever going to come home and settle into the even tenor of your ways?" And Richard wrote back with this brilliant paragraph that's all about how he will never settle into an even tenor, how he despises the term completely, and that he vowed to make his life as uneven as possible. My travels first really began in New Zealand when I was 20, and I spent 3 months hitchhiking through New Zealand and a little bit of Australia. And then a couple years later, I spent 3 months in East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. And then when I graduated college, a friend and I took a big trip through South America. We started in Argentina and Uruguay and spent a long time in Patagonia, and then followed the Andes up through Chile, Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador. And I've also been to Iceland. I spent a month in Iceland. And then my motorcycle trip all through Mexico and Central America. I mean, I have small fears, but they don't stop me from doing it because my love for travel far outweighs my fear of travel. Travel has just always come really naturally to me. It's never seemed like an effort or like even the big thing that it appears to be for many other people. It just is how I live my life. One of my main goals on this trip is to try to reconnect with the history of travel. When Richard traveled in the 1920s and 30s, he did so with this amazing appreciation for the history and culture of the places that he went. And he would show up, for instance, at the archaeological site of Troy, and he would have with him the Iliad, and he would sit at Troy for the entire day and look around as if it were still filled with the people in these stories, and he would read through the book and bring the whole thing alive in his imagination. And when it got to the point that Hector and Achilles were running around Troy 3 times trying to kill each other, Richard threw down his book and got up and ran around Troy 3 times to, like really put himself in that moment. And that kind of passion and excitement for the history of the place is just one of the most wonderful things about his travels and about his writings. And I've never had that sort of connection in my travels before. So I'm going to try to bring that appreciation for history and that connection to my own travels and hopefully inspire others to do the same. My entire adventure will be very present online. I have a Twitter account where I will be posting all sorts of tidbits from the road. That is at Uneven Tenor. I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/uneventenor, and I'll be posting a lot of photos there and updates from the road. And then I also have a website, uneventenor.com, and on there I will have full blog entries. I'll be posting a lot of photos of my own that are Well, I'll be recreating a lot of Richard Halliburton's photos. He has these great photos in his books from the 1920s and 1930s, and I'm going to try to revisit those same places with the same perspective and rephotograph them and see how they've changed in the past century. So there's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff going up on the website.